The day Jax Viral won the Galactic lottery, he was knee-deep in recycled sludge on the Outer Rim mining station Epsilon 7, cursing a faulty oxygen regulator and wondering if his third cup of synth coffee had finally cracked his sanity. He hadn't even bought a ticket. He'd been given one as a gag gift by a drunken engineer who swore the lottery was rigged by the Celestial Syndicate to keep hopeless souls like Jax from rioting. But when the holographic announcer from the Grand Orbital Spire, voice smooth as liquid mercury, eyes glowing like dying stars, declared his name over the broadcast net spanning 100 star systems, Jax dropped the wrench, the sludge splashed, and the entire station fell silent. 3 alien brides. From the Veithari Empire, the very empire that had burned his home colony, killed his sister, and turned his childhood into ash 20 years ago. The empire he'd spent his life avoiding, hating, and surviving. And now, the galaxy's most absurd, cruel, and impossible prize was his. 3 gorgeous, green-skinned, green-haired warrior princesses, daughters of the Veithari Queen, delivered to him in person, as part of the prize package. He didn't scream. He didn't cry. He just stared at the floating screen until his vision blurred, and then he vomited into a waste chute. The delivery ship arrived 3 days later, a sleek obsidian vessel shaped like a coiled serpent, its hull humming with forbidden Veithari energy tech. It didn't land. It hovered, silent and terrifying, above the rusted platforms of Epsilon 7, casting a shadow that swallowed the station whole. The airlock opened with a hiss that sounded like a dying god breathing. Out stepped the first of them, tall, impossibly elegant. Her skin shimmered like moss under moonlight, her hair cascading down her back in thick, liquid strands the color of deep jungle canopies, threaded with faint silver veins that pulsed when she moved. She wore armor that looked like woven starlight, form-fitting and ornate, with sharp, angular plating that gleamed with ancient runes. Her eyes were the color of molten jade, cold, calculating, and utterly devoid of mercy. She didn't speak. She didn't smile. She just looked at Jax like he was a particularly inconvenient stain on the floor of her ancestral palace. Her name, he would later learn, was Zalara, the eldest, the heir designate, the one who had led the raid on his home world when she was barely out of adolescence. She had been on the command bridge when the firestorms rained down. She had signed the order. The second arrived moments after, stepping forward with a grace that made the gravity on the station seem confused. Her hair was shorter, cropped into sharp, spiky tufts that stood like emerald flames around her head. Her armor was lighter, more agile, etched with symbols of speed and deception. Her name was Terra, the assassin, the one who had infiltrated the refugee transports and silenced the survivors with needle-thin blades that left no blood, only silence. She didn't look at Jax. She looked past him, as if he were a ghost she'd already killed in her mind 1,000 times. The third stepped out last, smaller, younger. Her hair was long but wild, tangled with beads and tiny glowing crystals that chimed softly with every step. She wore no armor, only flowing robes of iridescent silk that shifted from emerald to violet as she moved. Her eyes were wide, curious, trembling, not with fear, but with something far more dangerous. Wonder. She stared at Jax like he was the first real thing she'd ever seen outside a palace window. Her name was Nira, the youngest, the one who had never lifted a weapon, the one who had hidden in the palace gardens while her sisters fought, singing to the bioluminescent vines and feeding the skyfish with her own hands. They didn't speak to him. Not then. Not for days. Jax was given a suite on the ship, a suite that looked like a dream carved from alien coral and floating crystal. There were beds that adjusted to your heartbeat, food that appeared when you thought of it, and walls that changed color with your mood. He didn't sleep. He sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the viewport where the stars blurred into streaks of light as the ship hurtled through the void. He thought of his sister's laugh, the way she used to braid wildflowers into her hair before the war. He thought of the silence after the bombs. He thought of how he'd spent 20 years running, hiding, working, surviving, and now the universe had handed him the very people who had taken everything. He wanted to kill them. He didn't. Instead, he made tea. He found a small, battered tea set in the ship's storage, human, old, rusted, and he boiled water using the ship's thermal coils. He didn't know what they drank. He didn't know if they even had taste buds. But he poured 3 cups anyway. Green tea, the kind his mother used to make on quiet mornings before the sky turned red. He placed them on the low table in the center of the room. He sat down. He waited. Zalara entered first. She didn't look at the tea. She looked at him. "You are not worthy," she said. Her voice was low, melodic, and laced with venom. "You are a scavenger, a worm. You do not deserve us." Jax didn't flinch. "I didn't ask for you," he said. "But you're here, so I made tea." She stared. Then, slowly, she picked up one cup. She held it like it might explode. She sniffed. Her nostrils flared. Then, with a motion so precise it looked like a ritual, she sipped. She didn't spit it out. She didn't move for a full minute. Then she set the cup down. "It is bitter," she said. "Like life," Jax replied. She left without another word. Tara came next. She didn't sit. She stood by the window, arms crossed, watching the stars. Jax didn't speak. He just poured her a cup and placed it beside her. She didn't look at it. For 10 minutes she didn't move. Then, without turning, she said, "You know what we did to your world." "I know," he said. "Do you know how many children we left alive?" He didn't answer. She turned then. Her eyes were sharp, dangerous. "We left none." Jax nodded. "Then you're lying." She froze. "I've seen the records," he said quietly. "The archive on Kes-9. You didn't kill the children. You took them. You took them to your labs. To study their resilience. To see if humans could survive under Veithari radiation. You didn't kill them because you were afraid they'd outlive you." Tara's breath hitched. Just once. Barely noticeable. Then her face hardened. "You have no right to speak of what you do not understand." "I understand this," Jax said. "You're here because your mother forced you. And you hate it. And you're scared." She didn't answer. She picked up the cup. She drank it. Slowly. Then she placed it down. "It's warm," she said. And she left. Nira came last. She didn't enter the room. She stood in the doorway, barefoot. Her silk robes pooling around her like liquid twilight. She looked at the tea. She looked at Jax. Then she walked over, sat down on the floor, crossed her legs, and picked up the cup with both hands. She sipped. Her eyes widened. "It tastes like home," she whispered. Jax sat beside her. "What home?" She didn't answer right away. She stared into the cup. "My mother's garden. Before the war. Before the stars became weapons. There was a tree there. It grew silver fruit that sang when the wind blew. My mother said it remembered every soul who ever touched it." She looked up at him, tears glistening in her jade eyes. "I never touched it. I was too afraid to climb. I thought if I did, it would stop singing." Jax didn't say anything. He just sat there. And after a long silence, Nira leaned her head against his shoulder. He didn't push her away. That night, the ship passed through the nebula of whispers, a region of space where gravity twisted sound into echoes of the past. As the vessel glided through the swirling violet clouds, Jax heard it. A child's laugh. His sister's laugh. He looked over. Zalara was standing at the viewport, her hands pressed against the glass. Her shoulders trembled. Not from anger, from grief. Tara was curled in the corner, her face buried in her arms, her body shaking with silent sobs. Nira was asleep against Jax's side, her hand clasped around his, her breathing soft as wind through leaves. He didn't sleep that night either. He just held her. And for the first time in 20 years, he didn't feel alone. The Veithari Queen didn't send them to be his wives. She sent them to be his doom. The prize wasn't a gift. It was a trap. The Galactic lottery wasn't run by some benevolent AI or a rogue merchant prince. It was a centuries-old ritual of the Veithari royal court, a way to humiliate their enemies, to lure the most hated among them into a gilded cage, to force them to live with the daughters of the empire that destroyed them. The winner didn't get brides. He got tormentors. He got witnesses. He got a slow, public unraveling of his soul. And the queen had planned it perfectly. The ship was rigged with neural dampeners. If Jax tried to escape, the system would lock his mind in a loop of his worst memories. His sister's screams, the fire, the silence. If he tried to harm them, the ship's defenses would kill him instantly. If he refused to accept them as his brides, the galaxy would broadcast his cowardice across every channel, branding him a traitor to his own kind. He was trapped, and the queen had sent her 3 most dangerous daughters to ensure he broke. But she hadn't counted on Nira, or on Jax's stubborn, stupid human heart. Weeks passed. The ship traveled through sectors where stars were born in explosions of light and worlds died in silent collapse. Jax learned their routines. Zalara trained every morning in the zero-gravity chamber, her movements a lethal dance of blades and energy whips. She spoke only when necessary, always in the third person, as if distancing herself from her own name. Zalara does not eat meat. Zalara does not sleep beneath open skies. Zalara does not forgive. Terra moved like a shadow. She vanished for hours, reappearing only when Jax was alone, watching him. Once, he found her standing over his sleeping form, a dagger in her hand. But she wasn't holding it to his throat. She was holding it to her own wrist. When she saw him awake, she dropped it. "I thought," she whispered, "that if I bled, I could feel something real again." Nira spent her days exploring the ship. She touched every surface. She talked to the AI, which responded in a voice like a lullaby. She collected dust motes in jars. She sang to the plants that grew in the hydroponic bay, even though they were synthetic. She asked Jax questions, so many questions. Why do humans cry when they're happy? Do your stars have names? Do you dream of the future or the past? He answered them all, slowly, patiently, even when his voice cracked. One night, after a long silence, she asked, "Do you hate us?" Jax looked at her, her green hair glowing faintly in the dim light, her fingers tracing the pattern of a star map on the wall. "I hate what you did," he said. "But I don't hate you." She blinked. "Why not?" "Because you're not your mother." She didn't speak for a long time. Then she leaned her forehead against his. "I wish I could be someone else." "I know," he whispered, and that was the moment everything changed. It wasn't a grand moment. No explosions. No declarations. No sweeping music. Just two broken people, sitting in the dark, holding each other like they were the only anchors left in a universe that had forgotten how to be kind. Zalara found them like that. She stood in the doorway, silent. Her face was unreadable. Then, without a word, she turned and walked away. But the next morning, she didn't train. She sat at the table. She poured herself tea, and she didn't leave. The Queen's trap had one final layer. The ship wasn't just a prison. It was a test, a ritual. To claim the prize, the human had to survive 3 trials, each one designed to break his spirit, his will, his humanity. The first trial came as they entered the Veithari system. The ship was intercepted by a fleet of warships, black, jagged, and screaming with the sound of 1,000 dying engines. The Veithari Royal Guard. They demanded the human be handed over. The brides were to be returned to the Queen. The prize was revoked. The lottery was nullified. Jax stood on the bridge, surrounded by alien warriors, their weapons trained on him. Zalara stood beside him, silent. Terra was at the rear, her fingers hovering over a hidden panel. Nira clung to his arm, trembling. The lead commander, a monstrous figure with 6 arms and eyes like burning coals, spoke through a translator. "The human is not worthy. He has not earned the brides. He has not proven his strength. He has not faced the trial of blood." Jax looked at Zalara. "What is the trial of blood?" Zalara's voice was quiet. "It is the ancient custom. The human must defeat one of us in single combat. The victor claims the bride. The loser dies." Jax stared at her. "You're going to kill me." Zalara didn't answer. Terra stepped forward. "No," she said. "She's going to let you kill her." All eyes turned to her. Terra looked at Jax. "She's been waiting for someone to end her. She can't live with what she did. She can't live with the silence. If you kill her, she'll be free." Jax looked at Zalara. "Is that true?" Zalara's eyes flickered. Just once. A crack in the ice. Then she turned to the commander. "I accept." The arena was a floating ring of black stone, suspended above a planet of molten glass. The sky burned crimson. The air smelled of sulfur and ozone. 10,000 Veithari warriors watched from their ships, their faces cold, their silence louder than any cheer. Jax stood on one side, Zalara on the other. She wore her full battle regalia. Her armor glowed with energy runes. Her weapons, the twin Veithari serpent blades, hummed with lethal frequency. She was a storm given form. Jax had nothing. No weapon. No armor. Just his boots, his clothes, and the tea mug he'd carried with him since Epsilon 7. The crowd roared. The signal was given. Zalara moved like lightning. The first strike shattered the ground where Jax had stood. The second sliced through the air, missing his neck by a hair. The third, fast enough to split a star, came at his chest. Jax didn't dodge. He raised the tea mug. The blade struck it. The mug shattered. But the blade stopped. Just stopped. The energy of the serpent blade recoiled, as if hitting something it couldn't comprehend. A force field. A memory. A heartbeat. Zalara froze. Jack stepped forward. He didn't fight. He didn't swing. He reached out, and he touched her cheek. His thumb brushed away a tear she hadn't realized she'd shed. The crowd fell silent. Zalara's blades flickered, then died. Her armor dimmed. She dropped to her knees. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Jax knelt beside her. "I know." And for the first time in centuries, a Veithari royal wept in front of her people. The trial was over. Jax had not won by strength. He had won by seeing her. The second trial came at the edge of the dying stars. A barren desert world where the sand was made of crushed crystal, and the wind screamed with the voices of the dead. Here, the Veithari had once buried their enemies alive, letting them suffocate under the weight of their own guilt. Terra was chosen. She stood in the center of the dune, her body wrapped in chains of living shadow, her mouth sealed by a rune of silence. She could not speak, could not move, could not fight. Jax had to free her. But the rules were simple. He had to do it without using any technology. No weapons, no tools, no energy fields, just his hands, just his will. The desert stretched for miles. The suns blazed. The air burned his lungs. He crawled. For 3 days. He dug with his fingers until his nails broke. He drank his own sweat. He slept under the stars, wrapped in his coat, whispering to the wind. He didn't speak to Terra. He didn't beg. He didn't plead. He just kept digging. On the 4th day, when the stars were at their coldest, he reached her. Her eyes were hollow. Her body was broken. Her lips were cracked. He pulled the chains from her wrists. He broke the rune with his teeth. Then he held her, and he sang. Not a song he knew. A song his mother used to hum. Tuneless, broken thing. And slowly, impossibly, Terra began to hum along. The desert fell silent. The chains dissolved into ash. The runes faded. And when the sun rose, Terra stood beside him. Not as a warrior, not as an assassin, but as a woman. The third trial came on the day they reached the Veithari homeworld. The queen awaited them in the Palace of Whispering Thorns, a towering structure of living crystal that grew from the bones of fallen kings. Its halls were lined with portraits of every human who had ever won the lottery. Every one of them had died. Every one of them had broken. The queen sat upon her throne of fused star metal, her skin like polished jade, her hair a crown of living vines that dripped with liquid shadow. Her eyes were ancient. Her voice was the sound of a galaxy dying. "You have passed the trials," she said, "but you have not earned them." Jack stepped forward. "I didn't come to earn them. I came to save them." The queen smiled. It was the smile of a god who had already won. "You think you love them?" she asked. "You think your pity is love? You think your tears are enough? You are a human, a fragile, fleeting thing. You will age. You will die. They will live for centuries. They will forget you. They will move on. They will become queens. They will rule empires. And you? You will be a footnote, a ghost in a memory." Jax didn't flinch. He looked at Nira. She was standing at the edge of the throne room, her robes shimmering, her eyes filled with tears. He walked to her. He took her hand, and he kissed her. Not like a man claiming a prize, like a man choosing a home. The queen's smile vanished. The palace trembled. The vines on the walls withered. The portraits on the walls cracked. And then the most impossible thing happened. Zalara stepped forward. She removed her crown. She dropped to one knee. "I renounce my title," she said. "I renounce my throne. I renounce my name." Terra stepped beside her. "I renounce my blade." Nira stepped forward. "I renounce my fear." They looked at Jax, and they said together, "We choose you." The queen rose. Her voice shook with rage. "You will be cursed. You will be forgotten. You will be erased." Jax looked at her. "No," he said. "You will be forgotten. We will be remembered." And then he turned, and he walked out. They didn't go back to the galaxy. They didn't go back to any empire. They went to a quiet moon, far from the war, far from the noise, far from the stars that had taken everything. It was a place called Luminara, small, overlooked, covered in fields of glowing blue grass that hummed when the wind blew. There were no cities, no ships, no weapons, just trees, and sky, and silence. Jax built a house with his hands. Zalara carved the door from a fallen tree that had grown around a meteorite. Terra wove the curtains from spider silk spun under moonlight. Nira planted flowers that bloomed in colors no one had ever seen. They didn't speak much. But when they did, it was always kind. Zalara taught Jax how to meditate. He taught her how to laugh, really laugh until she cried. Terra taught him how to move without sound. He taught her how to dance. In the rain, barefoot, spinning until she fell. Nira sang every morning. And every night, they sat together under the stars, holding hands, watching the sky. One evening, as the twin moons rose green and silver, Jax took out the last of the tea. He poured 4 cups. He handed one to each of them. And he said, "I never thought I'd find a home." Zalara smiled. "You didn't find one," Terra added. "You built it." Nira leaned her head on his shoulder. "And now it's ours." He looked at them. His 3 green-haired, green-skinned, impossibly beautiful, heartbreakingly brave women. And he knew, deep in the marrow of his bones, that this was the only victory that ever mattered. Not the lottery, not the trials, not the war. This, right here, this quiet, imperfect, perfect love. And when the first star fell from the sky, bright, slow, and silent, they all reached for each other's hands. And they didn't let go. Not ever. They lived. They loved. They grew old. Zalara's hair turned silver with time, but she still trained every morning, now with wooden swords, laughing as Jax tripped over his own feet. Terra's eyes softened, and she began to paint. Vast, swirling murals of the stars they'd seen, of the worlds they'd left behind, of the home they'd made. Nira's voice never lost its song, even as her hair turned to moss green and her skin wrinkled like old parchment. And when Jax passed, gently, in his sleep, with all 3 of them holding his hands, the entire moon seemed to sigh. The blue grass glowed brighter. The trees bent low. The wind carried their names, not as conqueror or conquered, not as enemy or prize, but as one. Jax and the 3 who loved him. And if you ever visit Luminara, on quiet nights when the twin moons are high, you might hear it, the faintest hum. A song. 3 voices. 1 heart. Still singing. Still together. Still home. Jax's peaceful end was not the end the universe had written. 3 cycles after his death, by Veithari reckoning, not human, the silence shattered. Luminara had become sacred ground. The Veithari Empire, now fractured by civil war following the Queen's sudden and mysterious demise, had declared the moon off-limits. No ship was to enter its orbit. No signal was to disturb its sky. But one night, a vessel unlike any before tore through the upper atmosphere. A jagged shard of obsidian fused with pulsing organic veins, its hull whispering in a language older than stars. It bore no insignia, no registry, no name. Only a single symbol burned across its prow. A serpent coiled around a broken crown, the mark of the forgotten branch, the exiled royal lineage thought extinct for 500 years. From its belly descended not warriors, but a child. She was no older than 12 by human measure, though her eyes held centuries. Her skin shimmered with a faint pearlescent sheen over the familiar green, and her hair, thick, wild, and threaded with strands of gold, trailed behind her like comet dust. She wore no armor, only a simple tunic stitched with glyphs that pulsed softly in the moonlight. She landed not with force, but with grace, as if the air itself bowed to her presence. She walked straight to the house Jax had built. The 3 women stood on the porch, unmoving. Zalara's hand rested on the hilt of her ceremonial blade. Terra's fingers twitched toward the hidden daggers in her sleeves. Nira simply watched, her heart pounding like a trapped bird. The girl stopped 10 paces away. She bowed deeply, palms pressed together. "I am Veila," she said, her voice clear as a bell chiming underwater. "Daughter of Zalara, Terra, and Nira." Silence. Nira gasped first. "That's impossible." Zalara's face went hard as stone. "We never bore children." "You didn't," Veila replied gently, "but you dreamed of them." She reached into her tunic and pulled out a small orb of swirling emerald light. Within it floated a single strand of silver hair, Jax's, and 3 tears. One from Zalara on the day of the trial of blood, one from Terra in the crystal desert, one from Nira the night Jax kissed her beneath the dying stars. The orb hummed, resonating with the energy of memory itself. "The Queen didn't just curse you," Veila said. "She harvested your love. She stole the moment your souls fused with his on the battlefield, in the desert, in the palace, and she sealed it in the heart of Vaith. She used it to create me, not as a weapon, but as a vessel, a living bridge between human and Veithari, a being of peace or of ultimate control." Terra stepped forward, eyes narrowed. "Why now? Why reveal yourself?" Because the heart has awakened, Veila said, her voice trembling, and it is calling for its mother. The heart of Vaith was not a myth. It was the core of the Vaithari homeworld, a living, sentient crystal the size of a city, buried beneath the palace of whispering thorns. It had powered their empire for millennia, amplified their minds, extended their lives. But it had grown unstable since the queen's death, craved balance, and it believed Veila, born of human fragility and Vaithari power, was the missing piece. But others believed differently. A warlord named Korik, a ruthless general from the Forgotten Branch who had murdered the queen and seized control of the military, wanted Veila not for peace, but for dominion. With her blood, he could awaken the heart's full power, rewrite reality, and enslave every sentient mind in the galaxy. He had already begun tearing worlds apart, searching for her, and he knew she was here. As if summoned by her words, the sky split open. Korik's fleet descended, not sleek warships, but grotesque amalgamations of metal and living tissue, fused with screaming prisoners whose neural pathways fed the vessel's engines. At their center loomed the Devourer, a mobile fortress shaped like a gaping maw, its hull lined with eyes that wept black fire. "They'll burn Luminara to ash to get to you," Zalara said, her voice low and urgent. "We can't run," Terra countered. "We've hidden long enough." Nira looked at Veila. "You're not just her daughter," she realized. "You're ours too, aren't you?" Veila nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Every choice you made with Jax, every moment you chose mercy over vengeance, it was woven into me. I am the child of your redemption." Zalara closed her eyes. When she opened them, the ice was gone. Only fire remained. "Then we don't hide," she said. "We fight." They had no army, no weapons, no ships, but they had something Korik could never understand. They had each other. Terra took Veila into the hills, teaching her the old ways, not of killing, but of seeing. "The enemy is not his soldiers," she whispered. "It's his fear. Find it, name it, and it will collapse." Nira sang to the moonflowers, and they bloomed brighter, their pollen releasing a calming neurospore that slowed aggression and muddled violent impulses. The very air of Luminara became a shield. Zalara stood at the edge of the valley, facing the sky, and called out in the old tongue, a language not spoken in 500 years. It was the language of the heart. She wasn't commanding it. She was pleading, and the heart answered, not with power, but with memory. When Korik's forces landed, they expected resistance. They found a field of glowing blue grass, a house with an open door, and 3 women waiting, barefoot, unarmed. Korik stepped forward, his body armored in living bone, his eyes burning with red fire. "Where is the girl?" he demanded. "She is not yours to claim," Zalara said. Korik laughed, a sound like grinding planets. "You think love will save you? You think your little moon matters in the face of destiny?" Then he raised his hand. The Devourer's eyes blazed. Beams of black fire lanced toward them, but the beams never struck. The moonflowers released their spores. The soldiers faltered. Their weapons dropped. And then Jax appeared. Not truly, but a projection, woven from memory and moonlight, standing beside Zalara. Then another beside Terra. Another beside Nira, smiling. "Whole. Human." Korik staggered back. "Illusions." "No," Veila said, stepping forward from the tree-lean. "Echoes." She raised the heart orb. It exploded not with force, but with feeling. The entire battlefield was flooded with the memory of Jax's final moments. His love, his forgiveness, the quiet joy of holding hands under twin moons, poured into every mind, soldier, ship, even Korik. For the first time in his life, Korik felt something other than hunger. He felt guilt. He roared, not in anger but in agony, and clutched his chest as if his heart were splitting open. His armor cracked. His soldiers knelt. The Devourer let out a mournful wail and shut down, its eyes dimming to soft blue. In the aftermath, Veila stood before the heart itself, now floating above the ruins of the palace, pulsing gently like a sleeping beast. "You don't have to control it," Nira told her. "You can heal it." So Veila did. She placed her hands on the crystal. She didn't command. She sang. The song Jax's mother had hummed. The song Nira had carried across stars. The heart glowed gold, then green, then silver, and for the first time in 1,000 years, it wept. Not tears of power, but of sorrow, of release. The war ended that day, not with a treaty, But with a lullaby, Zalara, Terra, and Nira returned to Luminara. Not as widows, but as guardians. Veila became the new custodian of the heart, not as a queen, but as a bridge, traveling between worlds, teaching the young of both species that strength isn't in conquest, but in connection. And sometimes, on quiet nights, when the twin moons rise just right, you can see 4 figures sitting on the porch of a small house made of wood and memory. 3 women, and a man made of starlight and love, still together, still home, but now, with a daughter who carries their legacy. Not in blood alone, but in the quiet courage to choose kindness in a galaxy that never stops raging. They never had a wedding ceremony, not in the way empires record, not with robes of silk and vows spoken under golden altars, but on the morning the first spring bloom opened on Luminara. Pink as dawn, soft as a sigh. They woke together, as they always had, in the house Jax built. Zalara had braided her silver hair with wildflowers. Terra had painted their doorframe with the same star map she'd once drawn on the walls of her prison cell. Nira had baked bread with honey from the moonbees, and Veila had woven 4 tiny crowns from glowing grass and placed them on the table. No one spoke, they just sat. And when the sun rose high enough to kiss the windows, Zalara took Terra's hand. Terra took Nira's. Nira took Veila's. And Veila reached out, gently, shyly, and took the hand of the 4th figure who had been waiting beside them all along. Not flesh, not bone, but light. Jax's light. It didn't speak. It didn't need to. It simply pressed its warmth against hers. And in that moment, beneath the twin moons and the singing trees, the heart of Vaith pulsed once, soft, slow, and sweet. And the entire moon trembled not with power, but with joy. They were married, not by law, not by ritual, but by choice. Again, and always, the children came slowly, like petals on the wind. First came Leor, born with hair like liquid moss and eyes that changed color with his mood. Blue when he laughed, violet when he dreamed. He could talk to the skyfish and make the grass glow just by humming. Then came Sari, the quiet one, who never cried but could mend broken machines with her touch and spoke only in songs that made adults weep without knowing why. Then came Ren, wild and loud, who climbed the tallest trees and shouted his name to the stars until the wind answered back. Then came Kayla, not the name they'd planned, but the one the heart whispered to Nira in a dream. And she was born with 3 strands of gold in her green hair, just like Veila. They grew up running through the fields, barefoot and laughing, chasing fireflies that sang in harmony with their mother's lullabies. They learned to plant seeds that bloomed into lanterns. They learned to listen to silence. They learned that strength wasn't in how hard you hit, but in how softly you held someone when they were broken. Zalara taught them how to stand tall, even when the world tried to break them. Terra taught them how to move unseen, not to hide, but to protect. Nira taught them how to sing when the night felt too long. And Veila? She taught them how to remember, not just the names of the dead, but the love they left behind. When the first grandchild was born, a girl with hair like twilight and skin that shimmered like opal, the entire moon celebrated, not with fireworks, but with silence and song. The children brought their own children, and their children brought theirs. Soon the house expanded not with walls but with roots. The trees grew around the doorways. The vines curled into staircases. The floor became warm underfoot, like a living thing cradling them. There were 23 grandchildren, 47 great-grandchildren, and 1 great-great-granddaughter named Mira, who was born during a solar eclipse, and who, when she was 5, climbed to the top of the tallest tree and whispered to the heart. It answered, in Jax's voice, just once, "Thank you." And then, the wind carried the sound away. No one spoke of it, but everyone knew. They didn't live forever.